forsaken booth. The truth is you sadly mistaken proof. I'm better than layman shoot. I'm super.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we'll be discussing the debate between Al Snow and Vince Russo about whether wrestling is a commercial or is it a television show. Now, this came as I sort of waffled on a question by one of my subscribers named D-Mac. He asked, how do I view wrestling? What do I see it as? And I think that wrestling has so much, it's so much of a paradox that it's very hard to say pin down exactly what it is. So I don't think this debate is going to answer that question, but it will force me to think a little bit more clearly about what wrestling as a presentation is supposed to be. What is the goal of it? Now, this is a very short clip. Vince Russo has a content network called The Brand, and on it he has a show called Lions, Tigers, Bears, and Head, and this is where him and Al Snow are going to have this conversation. And I think that it was pretty enlightening, and it might be something that might be very interesting to the audience. So let's get into it.
The wrestling business, the wrestling show, is not a television show. Period. It's not Breaking Bad. It is not a television show. It is a commercial. Period. It has always been and it always will be a commercial to sell your talent. That's it.
So this is Al Snow's position. Wrestling is not a television show. It is a commercial to sell your talent. Now, the best way to really fill out Al Snow's argument is to use history. In the history of the wrestling business, television has been used to promote the live events. When television was invented, there was this belief that it was going to destroy the business of live sports or live entertainment. Because if people can see sports on television, why would they come out of their pocket to buy a ticket to go to the show? But what they ended up finding, of course, is that it was the opposite. You made people TV stars, and then all of a sudden people will be paying to see the TV stars. No different than, any other celebrity, like a movie star or something like that. So from there, television was essential to territories and to the promotion. You had to have TV. It got to the point where I think sometimes, to a degree, they were even paying for television. You were paying to be on TV. So promoters were coming out of their own pocket to pay to be on television because it was, again, advertising for their live events. They would feature the stars that they're trying to sell. You put a guy like Gorgeous George or Lou Thesz or whatever, you would put him on the show. He beat some guy. He looked great doing it. Talk a promo. And then when you see his name on a poster, on a billboard or something like that, you would be more inclined as a consumer to go watch Lou Thesz or Gorgeous George at the wrestling show, even if it's not televised. That became the central point of the business. Over the years, of course, as television grew, the business grew. So now you went from local syndicated television, so where if you are in Detroit, you get Big Time Wrestling or whatever the case may be, and it stretches as far as Ohio, maybe to Indiana, and that's pretty much it. Then you got cable. So now cable, you can be based in Detroit, but your show can be seen in Las Vegas or in Maine because it's crossing nationwide borders. This, of course, forced a change in the business. The WWF was truly the first national wrestling promotion. And the NWA wasn't a wrestling promotion, for the record. It was an organization. So the WWF, through the power of Madison Square Garden Network, and I think later HBO, and some USA Network, they were able to become a national promotion because their show could be anywhere. The show could be based in Philadelphia, but be shown in San Francisco, and there was no borders. So then, of course, WWF becomes a global promotion with the advent of pay-per-view and later streaming. So now anybody, anywhere across time can see these events. And it makes, the industry bigger. Now, what Al Snow is arguing is what he's talking about. He's talking about it from a perspective of a performer. As a performer, and this is something Al Snow has said before, if it costs $50 to have a commercial on Monday Night Raw, and it costs far more than $50, so I'm going to use simple numbers here, and that equals a 30-second spot on Raw as a commercial. So Red Lobster sends $50 to USA Network, run this commercial during Monday Night Raw. That's $50 that the USA Network now has made. As a wrestler, if you want more time, you have to be able to say, if Red Lobster is willing to pay $50, I can generate $75 if you give me that same 30 seconds. Now the company can say, okay, well, look, now we got this guy. He can generate more money than Red Lobster can. But of course, it's going to be a different situation because USA Network wants a cut, and they're not going to get a cut of anything that's come from the wrestler. At least not that I believe so. So as a wrestler, you're looking at it from, I need more TV time, because I want to sell gimmicks. I want to sell T-shirts. I want to sell merchandise, action figures. I want to sell cards. I want to help sell the video game. I want to sell gear. I want to be able to auction off my old gear later. I want to be able to do all of these things and make all this money. Then your match is a commercial for yourself, And I see what Al Snow was talking about, Now, from the company's perspective, they're going to want to have more commercials because it helps their television partner. So you want to make sure that everybody who's on the show is going to be profitable in some way. And so therefore, you're going to have a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's going to get a lot of time on the show. In doing so, you do prop up the ratings for the show. And therefore, USA Network can go to Red Lobster and say, hey, you was paying $50 before, got to pay $75 now. You were paying $75 before, you got to pay $100 now. And that's how the business grows. You as a performer generate more attention, more eyeballs. That increases, people paying for you to see you. That shrinks the number of commercials. Then the number of commercials opens up as, more companies want to buy more TV time. And of course, it becomes an auction on the end of USA Network, because if Red Lobster wants to pay $50, but Applebee's would pay $100, they're going to go with Applebee's, right? So that's kind of how things work. It's a commercial. You're selling an image, you're selling your persona to the audience, to the people in the back, to anybody who might be watching that might be interested in you. It could be Hollywood producers, TV producers, anyone. It should be no surprise that WWE superstars, especially when they get to a certain level, become television stars and they start going into movies and going into TV. John Cena, The Rock, Batista, etc. That's because WWE invested a lot of time in them and was able to, sell a bunch of gimmicks, train them, that kind of stuff. Now, there's going to be some loss in that because it's just like the music business. In the music business, there's going to be some palm grease and some payola to the radio station. Now, nobody's asking for Bloody Nursery, whatever your your band is called. Nobody cares about your music. They don't even know you exist. So it's going to take for somebody to have their palms greased in order for you to get played on the radio. And they're going to keep playing your song on the radio even though nobody asked for it, under the hopes that eventually that song will generate income later. So you will have people who are not necessarily stars right now in the wrestling business, but you will hope that they will generate money at some point in the future. So you keep putting them on TV. You keep featuring them. And eventually they'll make that money back. And by making that money back, I don't necessarily mean ticket sales. Like, it could also be T-shirts, merchandise, all that stuff counts. It all matters. So there's going to be a certain amount of kickback, to that whole thing that we're investing in the future. So yes, some guys might be on TV too much right now and they don't generate ratings. They don't generate TV, interest at the moment, but who knows, 5-10 years, you never really can't tell. So that's the Al Snow argument. And I completely understand it from the perspective of a performer. Your interest is in getting on TV to sell yourself as an intellectual property, as a brand. I get it. I understand that. Let's see what Vince Russo has to say.
The opposite, and that's where you and I greatly disagree.
Right. And it's okay to be wrong.
No, I'll tell you why. No, I'll just tell you why. Because to me, as a writer, it is a television show. Exactly. Because you are on television and you are competing against other television shows. Bro, you're on prime time TV.
You're right. And you're still doing the same thing.
Now, Vince Russo's argument, of course, as he says, as a writer. But what he didn't say, and maybe it was edited out, is what is the purpose of a TV show? All right. So now TV shows, of course, they exist for the purposes of entertainment, but it's a business, right? Anything can be entertaining. They wouldn't put it on TV. Ultimately, it's a business. So primetime television, and I think Vince Russo said it, I don't know if it was in this clip or in another clip, where he says, if you want to put wrestling on at Saturday nights or Saturday mornings, then it's okay, whatever. But you're talking about primetime TV. And he's here talking about the prestige of being on at 8 o'clock during the week. That is a prestigious time slot. And these time slots are given depending on the ratings. And it is a competition. It's a competition for attention and eyeballs of people who have remote controls in their hands. So as a writer or a producer of wrestling, the producer of the content, you want to be able to grab as many of those eyeballs as possible on your product, therefore increasing the ratings for your product, increasing the interest in your product, and therefore increasing the ad revenue of your product. And it makes perfect sense because the TV rights pays the bills. You know, the billions of dollars that WWE gets for Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and NXT is what keeps the lights on. If they have to slash those things, there's going to be people losing their jobs. That's how they pay the bills. So I understand what Vince Russo was talking about. You have to view it as a TV show because that's the business. You know, if it's not a TV show, then it's not really a business. But they're both talking about business, just different levels of business. You know, Al Snow was talking about business on the individual level of the performer. The performer isn't in it alone, though, because the company is involved with that. You know, the company has to put the performer in position to make money, whether that's winning, losing, making sure their look is okay, name is okay, everything. It's up. That's WWE has an immaculate amount of control over that sort of stuff. Maybe some people say that you shouldn't have that kind of control. Some people say they should. No matter what your opinion is on that, the WWE has to provide the platform in order for you to be able to sell stuff. All right. Now, who provides that platform? The TV networks. The TV networks provide the platform for WWE to sell their stuff. So WWE needs USA Network. So what Vince Russo is talking about is how do you placate USA Network? So we're really not arguing about what wrestling is. We're arguing about who is the audience. You know, in the comic book space, we have this conversation a lot. Who's the audience? The comic book stores who buy all of the product, or the actual readers who go into the comic book store and buy the stuff? And usually people have to be clear when they're discussing, hey, how many books are being sold in terms of comics. It was the same thing with music. I like to use music. Is we used to hear that people would go platinum, like, oh, he's gone, he shipped platinum, he shipped gold. In other words, the artist is so in demand that we sold out 500,000 copies of their CD, even if 500,000 copies of it has not been sold yet. You know, it's been shipped. It's been sent out into the universe. So we know that that's kind of how things go, where from the perspective of the television company, are they they're the partner, but are they the audience? Is it, we're going to produce what generates income for USA Network, or are we going to produce what generates money for the company, or generates interest and intrigue for the audience? There's all these different masters, and they're all very important. You can't just pick one and just say, screw all the other ones. It doesn't work that way. Because without the audience buying tickets or buying merchandise, nobody cares about your damn wrestling. Right? And if the company, doesn't have a platform, then nobody cares about your damn wrestling. And you may have a platform, you may have wrestlers, but if you're not selling anything, nobody gives a damn about your damn platform or your damn wrestling. You need all of it, but it has to operate in a certain way, where it has to be a cycle where everybody can feel like they're not being screwed. So I understand what Vince Russo is talking about, because Vince Russo constantly talks about, look at the ratings, the ratings, bro. Are USA Network and Fox getting a return on their investment? Now, the difference here is when I looked up, there's a guy on Twitter, his name is the TV Grim Reaper, and he had a Q&A section because he works in television. He used to work, I think, in Showbuzz Daily, and he had a Q&A, and he sort of explained how TV ratings work, and I want to read that to you guys in a second. Now, TV Grim Reaper, he got a section on his website, says that, from September of 2015. It says, what matters for the renewal or cancellation of your favorite TV shows? And he says the short answer to the headline is money. But he says what's publicly known that matters. It says current season adults 18 to 49 ratings relative to other scripted shows on the same network. Now, compare this to what he says, what doesn't matter. And it says ratings versus shows on other networks, including winning a time slot or night. So when Vince Russo says you're competing with other shows on the other networks, that's true, but it doesn't matter. So if you become the number one show on a shitty night, but your ratings still aren't good, you still may get canceled. Okay? But here's what he has to say. He says ratings equal ad revenue for the network. Shows as much as 20% below the ratings, the network scripted average rating, are likely to be renewed. Shows above the average rating are likely a lock for renewal. Shows airing on Friday have typically been renewed with ratings as much as 30% below Sunday through Thursday. Then he's talked about who produces the show age, and syndication status. That's what matters. What doesn't matter: total viewership, critics, reviews, and awards, and ratings versus shows on other networks, including winning a time slot or night. So, if you're going to be a person who says that that USA Network is the person you're supposed to be servicing, then you're saying to yourself, USA Network should want to be number one on the time slot. Then that's the wrong measurement. You have to outperform other shows in that same time slot. That's the thing that they're asking you about here, and that's very interesting. Now, the problem with all of this is I don't think wrestling counts as a scripted show on the same network. Now, Monday Night Raw, it has scripts, but it's not. Al Snow is correct. It's not Game of Thrones. It's not Breaking Bad. The closest thing to it was Lucha Underground. Was the closest thing to wrestling as a straight up pure television show. Lucha Underground was the closest to it. It lasted, I think, 3 seasons, 3.5 maybe, and then it was over. But wrestling as an industry has been on television for 50 years. So you have to ask the question, if you want to ask the question whether the network is your employer and you are tasked with making money for the network, which you are. That's the reason why they have you and they signed a contract with you. Or is it with your audience, people who are going to be happy with your product? Then you need to try to figure that out, how you're going to balance that beam. But I understand both positions. Now, I think that it depends where you sit and which seat that you sit in. If you're Vince McMahon, what matters isn't the content of the show. So you don't care that people hate the show. If it's the worst WrestleMania of all time, you don't give a shit. You're looking at the gates, you're looking at merchandise sales, because when you go to that investor call, you're not going to say, you know what, pal, everybody loved the show. It's like, Vince, there was 10 people in the building, and there was nobody there, and everybody hated the show. Hey, pal, everybody, I got an award from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's like, no, he doesn't care, and that's why he doesn't care about content, and that's shameful, but it is what it is. It's why he will do rematches multiple times, because to him, and to some degree, the audience gets what they want, and USA Network is going to get what they want. So that's his main focus. Whether, people on Twitter are tweeting about it and love it or not is irrelevant. Now, if you're a performer, let's say you're somebody who's not being featured on TV right now, you don't give a damn if it's the greatest show on earth. You wouldn't own it. So you didn't get a chance to sell any t-shirts. You didn't get a chance to sell any merchandise. You didn't make a damn dollar out of this whole ordeal other than getting paid to travel to the building, because they do get paid to travel. So you got paid to show up, but you didn't make any extra money. While meanwhile, there's other people out here, they're raking money in on t-shirts and bobbleheads and everything else. And you're like, hey, I'm getting fucked out here. And you are. So you have to ask what seats do you sit in? It could be the greatest wrestling show on earth, but if it doesn't make any money, nobody cares. It could be the greatest wrestling show on earth, but if you didn't work that show, nobody knows, nobody cares. Who cares if you was backstage at WrestleMania? Really? Who gives a shit? You wasn't on the show. And if it doesn't generate any interest, then it doesn't matter whether the fans loved it or not. USA Network has no incentive to keep going with it. So you have to figure out that each one of them could be right, depending on which hat you decide to wear. If you're wearing the Vince McMahon hat, then you're looking at your rights fees, you're looking at your gates, you're looking at your merchandise, and you're saying everything is good. Product is great. People are willing to engage with it, and people are paying for the merchandise. Everything is good. Thumbs up. If you're at the USA Network, you're looking at the ratings. The ratings are steady, at least, dipping some comparative to the rest of the ratings on the network. You may be happy, you may not be happy. If you're a wrestler, did you work the show? How much time were you given? Did you sell any t-shirts? Did you sell any bobbleheads? Sell any action figures? If you did any of that stuff, then you're good. If you didn't get on the show at all, you may kind of be like, man, that sucks. You might start grumbling, may be unhappy. And it just all depends on where you sit. And if you're like us, me, you're in the audience, then you're kind of looking at this stuff all from above, where you're not really sure how much of this stuff actually matters and matters to who and to what degree, because relationships matter too. Sometimes WWE will put a guy out there knowing that the guy can't draw, he won't make any money, but he's friends with the right people. Maybe Vince has friends in USA Network, and even though the ratings are going down, the show continues to be renewed and signed up for more money. It could be all that sort of stuff could happen too. But I think that the debate depends so much. It's so relative, depending on where do you sit in the whole matrix of what wrestling is. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.